All right, we've reached the hour. The attendance may not be high, but we're going to go ahead and go. So, our announcements tonight, always involving health. Sylvia Robinson is scheduled for surgery to put a titanium plate in her jaw at Northside, Atlanta tomorrow morning. So keep that in your prayers, her. Loretta Davis is scheduled to see the oncologist to determine the next course of treatment, and that also will happen tomorrow. Christine LeKind is waiting for one more test result on the lymph nodes to determine if she will need chemo. Bob Erickson starts his radiation tomorrow. And Lancel Davis is scheduled to see an oncologist to determine the next course of treatment for him tomorrow. So a lot of things happening tomorrow, particularly, that we should keep in our prayers. Other things that we should be mindful of as far as prayers go. Yeah, Kent.
Yeah, please remember Carol's Anita and Billy. Carol's still having some heart problems she's going through. And actually, a friend of mine's wife, he passed away in Rochester. She's got macular degeneration. Her name's Renata Goss, and she's getting those shots in her eye. And working through that, and Tammy's mom fell down and yesterday.
You didn't have to come up with your own list, Kent. You know, we had a list. You could add one to it. You know, coming up with them. Now we're just glad to have people that are not on. Maybe that make us. All right. Anything else? Correct. That is this weekend. I haven't heard feedback from it, but I assume they did wonderfully, impressively last Wednesday in my absence. Of course, anybody up here in my absence does wonderfully in comparison, so that's fine. But I'm sure they did do great, and we certainly want to pray that they do well and represent well from that. Anything else? All right, if you bow with me. Dear Heavenly Father, we're, again, very thankful for this avenue of being able to communicate with you, to share concerns, appreciations, and all sorts of things that we want to talk to you about. This evening we have a number that are on our hearts and minds that are in situations of having procedures in the next day or so, and we ask that those go well and that things turn out well and leading to a return to health for those involved. We ask you to be with the people that are working with them, the caregivers, the medical personnel, that they will do an excellent job and will be able to direct the right course of action to be taken. We're mindful of those that are not in our immediate list that we talked about tonight, but are on our hearts and mind and on our prayer list, that you will be with them and that you take care of them and whatever is in your best interest and what's the best plan for them. We pray for full health if that's what you give them. We ask you to be with our lads and our leaderettes this weekend as they go to the convention, that they will be able to execute well in that situation, that they will grow with each other and grow in you and all the things that happen with that. We ask that you be with us as a congregation, that we continue to be one that's one of outreach and of growth, and one that strengthens and edifies each of the members here. We ask always your guidance, particularly when we study your word, that we'll find in it things that we can grow from and improve in and apply to our lives, and that we will do so. We pray this in your Son's name. Amen. So, if I can get there we go. Dreams and visions. We're still in the dreams world from that. So we'll pick up with the next dream. Let me turn on my clicker. So we've got to always start out with our summary from it to make sure we're all at the same place. So the summary is, I did go to Montana. The weather was pretty good. That's Glacier Park as far as I could get into it because there's still snow blocking the rest of it, so they haven't plowed it all out. But that's from one end of the biggest lake in Glacier National Park. And it proves I was there and didn't just take one off the internet. And yes, the wedding went fine, so I knew you were worried about that. My nephew successfully was able to get the bride to show up and marry him, and they're off in Maui at the moment. So I'm jealous of that. I'm here, they're in Maui, but weather isn't that much different. Anyway, let's actually summarize what we talked about 2 weeks ago. So I'm sure that you've kept it all in your hearts and minds, but we'll remind you anyway so we catch up where we are. We talked about Solomon's dreams. And we talked about the fact that Solomon was very faithful to God, except the fact that he had a tendency to worship at high places. High places very much associated with idol worship. High places is where they set those up. And we constantly hear throughout the Old Testament about those that are idol worshipers going and worshiping at high places and under green trees. He has a dream. This is after his father David has died and he's become king now. And he has a dream. It's a fairly simple dream in many respects. It's not one with visions of any scenes or anything, but instead God asks Solomon what he wants. What would he have? What would he desire now that he is God, the king of God's people from that? And Solomon asks for an understanding heart. He wants to be able to judge the people. And he says, you know, they're your people, they're numerous, and this is a daunting task that I'm not sure I'm prepared for. And I want to do a good job at this. And so what I want, if one thing I'm being able to ask you for, God, is I want the wisdom, I want the understanding to do a good job in being able to lead these people and to judge what's right and wrong in their differences and in doing whatever is the business of this nation from that. God is very pleased by that request. He's pleased that he is concerned not with himself so much. That request isn't about him become wise to impress everybody, but it is him wanting to have understanding to do a good job at the job he's been given, that he has gotten from David, yes, but inherited very much from God, that God directed it was going to fall to Solomon from that. So God is very pleased by this is what you want, something that's very focused on other people and not on yourselves. As a result, he not only wants to give him that, but he says, I will also give you unequaled riches and honor. You didn't ask for those things. But because I appreciate so much your unselfish request, I'm going to give you the things that somebody more selfish would be. And part of that is so the world will see how great I am as a God, that I have a king with all this honor and all these riches that hasn't been seen before and may never be seen again from that. And he also says, Solomon, if you stay faithful to me, if you follow my commandments and stay obedient to me, I will also give you a long life. Now we know that Solomon faltered off on that at the end. He pretty much fell into idol worship, very much drawn off by his wives, because he had wives that were not Israelites. They were not Jews, from the Pharaoh's daughter to people of the other nations around. And so he was not as faithful, but he lived a fairly long life from that. And Solomon, at the end of all that dream and everything, shows his appreciation to God, expresses his appreciation to God for granting not only his wish, but also these other benefits that God says, I'll give to you from that. And so that's the dream we saw from Solomon. Nebuchadnezzar's first dream is where we left off last week. So we spent some time going the fact that we've got Daniel involved. It's in Daniel that we read about it. Daniel by this time has already been established as wise and also as a dream interpreter. We don't know how that came about, but we know the wise came about from the tests that he was given. Remember him and three other guys. Interestingly, we think of Daniel by the name he had, Jewish Daniel. The three companions of his, we tend to know them by their Babylonian names. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, or however you want to pronounce those things. That's where I grew up, so that's why I say them. But those three are known by their Babylonian names. And so they were taken in to be raised, to be a part of not so much the royalty, but of the ruling authorities, and so they were, tested somewhat along the way. Remember, they also had gone through and changed the diet they were going to be given because they knew it was in difference to what God wanted them to have, and that worked out well. And when it came time to testing them, they tested far better than any of the other young men that were in the training program from that. So he'd been established as wise already from that. And so when the dream comes around, the first dream of Nebuchadnezzar, assuming I can move it forward. I thought I could. There, somebody didn't. Nebuchadnezzar has a very troubling dream. It really bothers him what he dreams about. And so he's concerned about it. So, of course, he doesn't know what it's about. But he knows that there must be some kind of meaning to what his dream has been. And so Nebuchadnezzar turns to, I'm still not going to have to do it for me. He turns to those that are supposed to have that capability. So he requests that not only he get an interpretation of his dream, but I don't trust you guys to just not make one up. So the first thing you're going to have to tell me is, what was my dream? Because I'm not going to tell you what I dreamed. If you're really good at this, if you really can have insight to it, you should be able to tell me the dream and not just the interpretation. So you have to have both the dream, and then if you've got that right, now I'll listen to your interpretation. But I'm not going to listen to an interpretation that you made up from it, so I'm going to want to know it from that point. I'm going to go ahead and flip it. The Chaldeans, who are kind of the leaders from that standpoint of the magicians, wise men, they say this is too hard. Can't be done. No king has ever asked this of their wise men. Nobody's ever said, hey, tell me what I dreamed. No, you always tell them what the dream is, king, and then we will turn around and interpret it for you. But the king says, I'm not buying that. I know what you'll do. You'll give me an interpretation, all right, but I have no reason to believe that it's the right interpretation, but you just made it up once you know what the dream is. So he sticks to his gun. So Nebuchadnezzar says, if you can't do it, I want all the wise men killed. All the wise men, magicians, etc., wipe them all out. They're worthless. They can't do what I asked. They don't need to be here anymore. So he gives a direction. Daniel hears about this, and interestingly enough, he wasn't called in there to be a part of that. And so Daniel asks the chief, the captain or whatever that was involved in it, and he says, can we have some more time? I'm not immediately ready for giving that advice, giving that input. I'm going to pray to God about it. So he goes about to pray to God. Not only him, but he goes back to his three friends and asks them to do the same. And so God does provide the dream and interpretation to Daniel. And that's where we left off 2 weeks ago. The fact that Daniel is now ready to tell him what his dream was and to interpret it for him. So picking up in Daniel chapter 2, in verses 31 through 36. Daniel speaking, you, O king, were watching, and behold, a great image. All right, well, that doesn't impress me yet. This great image, whose splendor was excellent, stood before you, and its form was awesome. This image's head was of fine gold, its chest and arms of silver, its belly and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of clay. Now, that's pretty detailed. Couldn't have made that one up. It's clear that he's got the dream nailed from that. And you watched while a stone was cut out without hands, which struck the image on its feet of iron and clay and broke them into pieces. Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold were crushed together and became like chaff from the summer threshing floors, and the wind carried them away so that no trace of them was found. And the stone that struck the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. This is the dream. Now we will tell the interpretation of it before the king. That's got to impress the king. It's not one of those dreams where, the common kinds of dreams like you dream about the fact that, you forgot to take a test, if you remember back in those days, or, you ended up going somewhere and forgot to put on all your clothes and you just showed up there. Those are some common dreams that people have had. So it wasn't one that anybody had had. Who would ever think of this one, of a big image and all these different materials making up that image? A large rock coming down that was cut out without hands and hitting it down there at the feet, everything getting set up and just going away like chaff in the wind from that. So we pick up in 37. You, that is Nebuchadnezzar, O king, are a king of kings. Now he's not just sucking up to him for that purpose. He has no real value or need to do that necessarily. But he's telling him this is, you are really a very unique king. You are a king of kings. Why is that? I'm going to tell you why you're a king of kings, Nebuchadnezzar. For the God of heaven has given you a kingdom, power, strength, and glory. Now, this is going to come back to haunt him in some ways later on when we look at his second dream. Daniel's saying you have what you have and you are who you are, not because of how great you are individually or wonderful things you've done or your people or your ancestors have done. You are in this position. You have the kingdom. You have the great power that you have. You have the strength of your army and of your nation and the glory that you're getting as such a powerful man. You have it because God gave it to you. It doesn't matter who you are in this world. What you had is given to you by God. You are merely stewards of that. Did Nebuchadnezzar get it because he was a follower of God? Absolutely not. He got it because that's what God wanted to do, and God gave it to him with a plan in mind of what he wanted him to execute in that role. He was the one that went, they were the nation that went and made captive a significant part of the Israelites because of their sin for God, or to God. And so there was a purpose in God making him in this role. But anybody with that kind of power and glory and all that stuff, it ultimately goes to their head. We'll see that in dream number 2, but we'll go on here in verse 38. And wherever the children of men dwell, or the beasts of the field and the birds of heaven, he has given them into your hand and made you ruler over them all. You have got everything in your domain. Every person and every being that's out there from that is under your control. And so what are you in this vision that you had? You are the head of gold. So we have the first one clearly identified. The head is the Babylonian Empire, therefore at this point represented by King Nebuchadnezzar. So that image that God gave him, that's what it is. But now there's more to the body than one head of gold. So he goes on and says in verse 39, but you, after you, shall arise another kingdom that's inferior to yours. It's going to be one that will come and replace yours, but it's not going to be quite as great as you are, Nebuchadnezzar, as your kingdom is right now. Then a third kingdom of bronze. So the second one, remember, that's the silver. The third kingdom is bronze, which shall rule over all the earth. He's describing kind of the transitions of power in the world. It's clearly what Daniel has given interpretation from God is explaining. That's the image you're seeing. This represents the passing down of power from you to other men. You are the gold. Now I'm saying it's a little bit less when we get to the bronze, or to the silver, and the bronze. Well, they will rule over all the earth. Going on to the fourth. And the fourth kingdom shall be as strong as iron. It's going to be a strong kingdom, inasmuch as iron breaks in pieces and scatters everything. And like iron that crushes, that kingdom will break in pieces and crush all the others. Whereas you saw the feet and toes, so that part's going to be strong. Iron's strong, it breaks down things. But the feet and toes, well, they're partly of potter's clay and partly of iron. That, the kingdom shall be divided. It's not going to be all one thing. That's where we're going to get some that's going to be clay, and some of it's going to be iron from that. Yet the strength of the iron shall be in it, just as you saw the iron mixed with the ceramic clay. And as the toes of the feet were partly of iron and partly of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly fragile. And as you saw the iron mixed with ceramic clay, they will mingle with the seed of men, but they will not adhere to one another, just as iron does not mix with clay. If you try to put iron and clay together, you're not going to get them to connect. They can coexist, but they can't actually adhere to one another and make anything from that. So he says the fragile part's going to be the down going, the downing of the whole, because it has not got that support. The iron can't help it because it can't adhere to it, and so that partly strong part isn't going to be enough. Thus, we saw that rock hitting at that point. It's not going to stand up to it. Moving on to verse 44. And the days of these kings, the kings that is of the latter part there, the two kingdoms, the clay and the iron, says, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed. And the kingdom shall not be left to other people. It shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. Inasmuch as you saw that the stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, and that it broke in pieces the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and the gold, the great God has made known to the king, to you, Nebuchadnezzar, God's chosen to tell you, king, what will come to pass after this, after you. The dream is certain. I'm not making up. These are what it was, and this is defined. It is going to happen, and its interpretation is true, is sure. So what I said is going to happen. There isn't going to be something that changes it, Nebuchadnezzar. And the way I've defined it is the way that it's going to happen from that. So he has given Nebuchadnezzar a view into the future, years and years into the future from that. Why? It wasn't for Nebuchadnezzar's benefit. He wasn't going to live years and years and years. He wasn't going to live to the point that he go, yep, let me check that off. I can see now we're in the silver one. I got that one checked off. All right, we've moved to bronze. He's not going to see any of those things. So he shared it with him so that Daniel would know about it and that Daniel could share it with the Israelites. One of those interesting ones when God uses a non-believer to send a message to the believers. And that's definitely what he's done here with Nebuchadnezzar. Now for Nebuchadnezzar, what is he getting out of it? A big head. I'm the gold one. I'm the best. I'm at the top. You know, it doesn't hurt his ego a bit to hear about this stuff. He doesn't really care what happens after him anyway. He does care that he has that legacy. If I was the greatest, then I've got a great legacy. So that part he likes. The rest of it, that's the future. It's cool, but it really isn't impactful to me personally from that. So let's go on in verse 46 then. Then King Nebuchadnezzar fell on his face. Can you imagine how wowed he was by the fact that somebody actually could tell him his dream? Do you think he actually believed in his heart that somebody was actually going to tell him what his dream was and then turn around and interpret it? He had hopes about that, but I don't know that he truly believed that anybody could do that. And here he's hearing it. And he falls down basically in a I'm not worthy kind of thing. If we take more of a, I don't know when that was, 80s, no, whenever we started saying I'm not worthy. Anyway, he prostrate, he's laying flat before Daniel. And he commanded that they should present an offering and incense to him. Sounds like they're going to worship Daniel. And we know that's not something God prefers. We know that when they tried to do that, a couple of the apostles in Acts, they were very quick to say, no, we're not gods. Daniel doesn't say that, but if we turn around and wait for a little bit, we find that he's not saying, that is, Nebuchadnezzar's not saying, Daniel, you're a god. What he says then in verse 47, the king answered Daniel and said, truly your God is the God of gods. He is the supreme God. I'm not going to take away and say there aren't other gods here. I'm not going that far, Daniel. But I will say he's superior to all of them. He's the chief God. He's like the Zeus of all the gods that are out there from that, sitting at the top of the whole spectrum of them. He's the Lord of kings and a revealer of secrets, since you could reveal this secret. I have to give you credit. Your God has to do it. That's who you said did it. And if you can give me my dream and the interpretation, then clearly I'm going to give credit to God, because you gave credit to God and didn't say this is just your capability from that. Then the king promoted Daniel and gave him many great gifts. And he made him ruler over the whole province of Babylon and the chief administrator of all the wise men of Babylon. Now, the province of Babylon isn't all of Babylon. That was just a localized area. The kingdom was much, much larger than that. So he was only going to be in charge of the, obviously the heartland of it, if you will, from that. And he put him over as all the wise men from Babylon from that. But what was Daniel's response to that? Then Daniel petitioned the king. He asked to the king, and he set Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the affairs of the province of Babylon. But Daniel sat in the gate of the king. So what he really did there is Daniel said, hey, put my friends in charge of the province. I want to be right there and kind of be able to give an input, have visibility to everything that's involved with the kingdom. I want to be kind of one of your right-hand men, king, so that whatever came up, whether it's right here in the province or beyond that, I'm going to have that kind of role. But my friends, and Daniel remembers, my friends prayed with me, and God's answer wasn't just an answer for me, Daniel. It wasn't just to save my life. And it wasn't just because I asked that we have the interpretation. It's because me and those three did it, and they should get some reward too. And that gave them a reward partially, and, like I said, gave Daniel an even more powerful position to be, a little more free. And as he sat in the gate of the king, to be able to be an advisor to the king about things beyond just Babylon. Now, what are those kingdoms that we're talking about? Well, most of the time people will give it to where obviously we know what the head is. He made that very clear. If Nebuchadnezzar is the head, then it's Babylonian kingdom. That is the gold from that. That was the first and the greatest. The breast and arms of silver is the Medo-Persian Empire that followed, right, under Cyrus and stuff. Yes?
Are you going to talk about that stone?
No, go ahead.
I've got a passage of scripture.
Sure.
I'd like to read. Peter
Absolutely.
talks about that.
Go ahead.
And Jesus is the stone that he's talking about.
Yep, he is.
Acts chapter 2. Beginning at verse 4. Said, come into him, talking about Christ, come into Christ as to a living stone, rejected indeed by men, but chosen by God, and precious. You also, as living stones, talking about Christians, calling us living stones,
Yeah.
are built up a spiritual house, a holy priesthood, to offer up spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God through Jesus Christ. Therefore, it is also contained in the Scripture, behold, I lay in Zion a chief cornerstone, elect, precious, and he who believes on him will by no means be put to shame. Therefore, to you who believe, he is precious, but to those who are disobedient, the stone which the builders rejected has become the chief cornerstone.
Yeah. And that's why he can say that one, God through Daniel, that is the forever kingdom, right? The stone is, as you said, is Jesus. He establishes it, and the kingdom is the church. Yeah, it's a totally different type of kingdom. That's why it can be forever. Any other kingdom is finite, right? Because it's physical, it's flesh. Only going to last so long. His kings last only so long. So that's the one that he doesn't describe, as a part of the deal, but he talks about that as, what it destroys it from that. And Peter does a great job of coming back to that, which is really where we'll talk about when we talk about our questions in a little bit. Where does this apply to us? And that's why I say it went to the believers from that to let them know what was going to happen all the way down to Jesus.
The amazing thing is, Isaiah prophesied about 800 years before that happened.
Yep.
Before the church came into existence.
Yep. But we have it here in Daniel even before, or about somewhat in the same area of time during the captivity. But we do. We have that deal. And God's revealing it, like I said, he's not revealing it to Nebuchadnezzar for Nebuchadnezzar's ability to use it. He's not going to be able to use it. It is for us. It is for the Israelites to look forward to and put it down. And it's great that the New Testament wraps that up for us, kind of, and makes that, final application from that, because he doesn't really talk about it here, does he? In Daniel, he doesn't say anything really about it. He just says there's a forever kingdom, which sounds very strange to the people at that time. Nebuchadnezzar's probably going, really? A forever kingdom? It must not really mean the word forever. It's a really long-term one. He meant a forever kingdom. And we only see that when we get to the New Testament. The belly and thighs of brass we see as the Macedonian Empire. That's the times of Alexander the Great and his ancestors from that. The iron really gets us to talk about the strength and all those kind of things. That's the Roman Empire, which is when Jesus was there. Then you start to see that break up with the barbaric nations and stuff, where you see the feet. And when we say it gets divided into 10 kingdoms, that's how it gets defined sometimes. And people looking back in history talk about it, 10 kingdoms. And then that, as Jack so accurately and aptly put it, we've got the stone that breaks it all down and sets up the eternal kingdom, which is what we have established now, the kingdom which is the church. And leads us on from there, with the king of that obviously being Christ himself. So he gives him a whole insight to a lot of time. Hundreds of years he's letting Nebuchadnezzar look into the future. But, why Nebuchadnezzar? I don't know. So questions we ask ourselves. The first question, who had the dream or vision? It was Nebuchadnezzar, king of the most powerful kingdom, empire of its time. And according to the vision from God, the most powerful one that they'd have in many ways. So number 2 question, what was the situation where it occurred? There really wasn't a situation. I mean, Nebuchadnezzar was in power, had been in power for a little while over the Babylonian kingdom, and just one night, he ended up having a dream that God gave him, and he spoke to him through that dream. The content of that dream was this image, an awesome image. You get an idea of not just pieces to it, but it had to be a pretty awesome size-wise. It was intimidating kind of image with all these different types of materials involved in it, and I would imagine an image whether it's a human, seemingly it is from the description of the body parts, but I would suspect a very muscular, very warrior type of image from that is what I would see. The purpose of that dream and vision wasn't so much for Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar loved it because it only helped stroke his ego by saying, you are the gold, you're the head of this empire image, and for all ever you'll be the one that led that in a lot of ways and being superior to the rest of them. But it really was to lay out God's plan and let people know, we think sometimes that God's not in charge. God has a plan. We don't always see it. We don't always understand it. And when it looks to governments and those types of things, we think that those things just kind of happen the way they happen. But God has a plan, and a lot of times He's made things happen. He certainly did in the Old Testament. How much of that carries on is not as clear, but we know that He says He puts governments into place and that He uses them for His purpose from that. And it figured into His plan because it exposed the Jewish people to what was coming. They had a very clear vision now, in some ways, of that eternal kingdom that was going to come. It was greater than anything that you're going to make with flesh. That's why He's going to crush it all down and all that would go away, but this was going to be forever. Any other comments about Nebuchadnezzar's first dream? He has a second dream. Daniel 4 gets to record it for us. Daniel 4 starts out with the interesting part that we're recording basically the words of Nebuchadnezzar that he wrote down, and Daniel is copying these words and not taking credit for it because he puts Nebuchadnezzar in there as the author. But it's interesting. We don't usually have an atheist, sort of, well, not an atheist, but certainly somebody who believes in different gods, somebody that gets to write material for the Old Testament. But he does. He says, Nebuchadnezzar the king, that's who I am. I'm the one writing this. To all the peoples, nations, and languages that dwell in all the earth. That's how much I think my kingdom covers. All the earth, all the peoples, wherever you are nation-wise, whatever language you're in. I, the mighty king Nebuchadnezzar, is writing this. Peace be multiplied to you. Just a good greeting to everybody. He says, I thought it good to declare the signs and wonders that the Most High God has worked for me. I'm going to tell you about how God has done things that impacted my life. The God of the Israelites, the Most High God from that. Starting verse 3. How great are His signs, and how mighty His wonders. His kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and His dominion is from generation to generation. He sets a very vivid picture. This is a great God. He's one that's mighty. He's got an everlasting kingdom. It's never going to break down, and His dominion covers from one generation to the next generation. This is who I'm going to talk about as it's impacted my life. Verses 4 through 7. I, again, mind you, I'm the one writing this, Nebuchadnezzar, was at rest at my house, and I was flourishing in my palace. Things were going great, and I was having a good time. I was having a good day. I saw a dream which made me afraid. Oh, this is the second one he's had. Remember, the other one troubled him from that. And the thoughts on my bed and the visions of my head troubled me. Therefore I issued a decree to bring in all the wise men of Babylon before me, that they might make known to me the interpretation of the dream. Hey, we've been down this path before. Let's call them all in. Now, why he would do that within a few years of the failure of those same men before, I don't know. But he chose to do that. Somehow they had ingratiated themselves to him again. So he calls them in to give the interpretation. Then the magicians, the astrologers, the Chaldeans, and the soothsayers came in, and this time what did he do? I told them the dream. He didn't do it last time, but he does it this time. He tells them what his dream was. But guess what? Even when he told them the dream, but they did not make known to me its interpretation. God didn't allow him to even make up some. Or if they did try to do that, he knew it wasn't true. He didn't get an answer to what is this, what does my dream mean from all those people. When it says he called in all of them, obviously he didn't call them in all. Same time anyway. Starting verse 8. But at last Daniel came before me. Got all the rest of them in there, gave them a chance. They didn't do it. His name is Belteshazzar, according to the name of my God. In him is the spirit of the holy God. And I told the dream before him. I told him what the dream was this time. And saying, Belteshazzar, chief of the magicians, because I know that the spirit of the holy God is in you, and no secret troubles you, explain to me the visions of my dream that I've seen and its interpretation. I find it interesting that he called other one in, and yet he knew who was the chief of them, and he waited till last. He gave everybody else a chance, and they messed it up. Now he still knows that if he really wants an answer to a thing, you got to go back and you got to get it from Daniel. He's the one that the great mighty God speaks to and allows to know those secrets from it. Verse 10, these were the visions in my head while on my bed. Here's my dream. I was looking, and behold, a tree in the midst of the earth, and its height was great. And the tree grew and became strong. Its height reached to the heavens, and it could be seen to all ends of all the earth. Its leaves were lovely, its fruit abundant, and in it was food for all. The beasts of the field found shade under it. The birds of the heavens dwelt in its branches, and all flesh was fed from it. Now, this is not the only time that a tree is basically presented this way in Scripture. There's another place, at least one other place in the Old Testament where that tree is presented that way. But here it is with him, and it says, this great tree is doing everything. It's providing everything that anybody needs, whether it's shade, whether it's a home, whether it's food. This tree is going to give it to them. And you can see it anywhere you go. That's how mighty and great this thing is. All right. I saw in the visions of my head while on my bed, and there was a watcher. Interesting word. The only time we see that word in the Old Testament. A holy one, further defining what that watcher's doing, or what kind of person it is, coming down from heaven. He cried aloud and said this, thus, chop down the tree and cut off its branches, strip off its leaves and scatter its fruit. Let the beasts get out from under it, the birds from its branches. Nevertheless, leave the stump and the roots in the earth, bound with a band of iron and bronze and the tender grass of the field. Let it be wet with the dew of heaven, and let him graze with the beasts on the grass of the earth. So now he says, I've got this guy comes down and says, hey, destroy it basically. Cut it down. Cut all the branches off of it. Scatter its fruit. Take off of all its leaves. Leave it there, but confine it. If you've ever had a tree, I remember when I was a kid, we had a tree that, I don't remember if lightning struck, I don't think so, but for some reason it kind of split. And at some point, I don't know if my dad did it before I was born or somebody before we bought the place, I'd gone up there and wrapped a chain around it. By the time I was a kid, all I knew was there was a chain growing into the side of the tree, but it held it together from that. That's what happens there at the bottom at the trunk, at the stump. It's pulling it together from that. But it's still there, and it's still got roots into it from that. Goes on in verse 16. Let his heart be changed from that of a man. His be who? That's the key. Let him be given the heart of a beast, and let 7 times pass over him. 7 times indicating 7 years, kind of completion of time in a lot of ways, but 7 years. This decision is by decree of the watchers, a group of them now, and the sentence by the word of the holy ones, in order that the living may know that the Most High rules in the kingdom of men. He's saying you got this great tree, represents somebody. Everybody looks up to it, kind of got full of itself. Guess what? Chop it down, because at the end of this thing, everybody's got to know the tree is not the power. Tree is not. It starts with something, it takes sun, it takes rain, it takes all sorts of things to make it grow up that way, to look like that. God is ultimately the power. The Most High rules in the kingdom of men. He gives to whomever he will, and sets over it the lowest of men. You don't have to be a great person. I can give kingdom to anybody. God can do what he wants from that. So you don't earn that. If you look at it, when the choosing of the various kings, sometimes the king that was chosen wasn't what people would choose. The judges, when they're chosen, weren't always people you'd choose. Yes, Samson, yeah. Gideon, not so much. Some of the others, not so much. But Most High will make those decisions. This dream, King Nebuchadnezzar, I've described all this as King Nebuchadnezzar explained what came out, what Daniel said about it, have seen. Now you, Belteshazzar, declare its interpretation, since all the wise men of my kingdom are not able to make known to me the interpretation. But you are able, for the Spirit of the Holy God is in you. I don't know how much of it is that Nebuchadnezzar doesn't see some of what it's saying from that, doesn't apply it to himself, or how much he's hoping it isn't that way and he wants Daniel to tell him something else. I don't know how much of it, because there's a lot of it semi-obvious in that it's about Nebuchadnezzar. that it wasn't so much that the magicians and seers and all those people couldn't do some of the interpretation, but they were scared and didn't want to say something negative to the king. So the obvious parts they didn't share either, because that doesn't seem good for my head. Not going to do that. So I don't know what it said. I'm sorry, king, I don't know. We all hope Daniel will come in here and he'll handle it for us, and we'll all be saved again. We'll leave it to Daniel. I'm not going to take that chance. Verse 19. Then Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, remember, we don't call him that most of the time throughout the book. We don't call the book by that name, but that is his Babylonian name, was astonished for a time, and his thoughts troubled him. This reminds me of somebody else that we saw that, or haven't seen, I guess, because it was a vision, not a dream that we're going to see, but another person that you may think of in the Old Testament that was troubled by what he learned from God. It wasn't an interpretation in that case, it was a vision that we'll talk about. And that's Samuel, right? What God told him about Eli. That bothered him a lot. Did he want to tell Eli about it? No. Is Daniel excited to tell King Nebuchadnezzar about this? No. That's why it's troubling him, and why he's astonished that this is going to happen to such a great king. So the king spoke, I, Nebuchadnezzar, but I'm going to say it in the third person, and said, Belteshazzar, do not let the dream or its interpretation trouble you. Much like Eli will tell Samuel, go on with it. If God wants me to hear it, it's going to be the right thing for me to hear. Belteshazzar answered and said, my lord, may the dream concern those who hate you. Let it not really be about you. It is, but I would like to wish it on them instead. And its interpretation concern your enemies. The things I'm about to tell you that God says is going to happen to you, I wish it was going to happen to your enemies. That's what I would like it to be about, but it's really about you, Nebuchadnezzar. The tree that you saw, which grew and became strong, whose height reached to the heavens, and which could be seen by all the earth, whose leaves were lovely and its fruit abundant, in which it was food for all, and under which the beasts of the field dwelt, and in whose branches the birds of the heaven had their home. It is you, O king, who have grown and become strong. Well, that's all great to that point. If I could stop the dream at just that mighty tree, Nebuchadnezzar again would be going, love this dream. Love your king. I love your God. This is great. But that's not the end of it, is it? For your greatness has grown and reached the heavens, and your dominion to the end of the earth. All still good. But that is the way that King Nebuchadnezzar saw himself, that he was great, and that he had power over all the earth, and it was about him. So as we continue on in verse 23, and inasmuch as the king saw a watcher, a holy one, coming down from heaven, saying, chop down the tree and destroy it, but leave its stump and roots in the earth, bound with a band of iron and bronze and the tender grass of the field. Let it be wet with the dew of heaven, and let him graze with the beasts of the earth till 7 times pass over him. Well, I'm going to tell you the exact interpretation. I told you what the tree was. Now I'm going to tell you the interpretation of this latter part. This is the interpretation, O king. And this is the decree of the Most High, which has come upon my lord the king. This isn't me talking now. I'm interpreting. I'm giving you what God has said in the dream and what he's let me know it means. They shall drive you, Nebuchadnezzar, from men. And Nebuchadnezzar, your dwelling shall be with the beasts of the field. Not in this wonderful, castle thing that you live in, whatever it looks like, the royal residence here. But you're going to be in with the beasts of the field. And they shall make you eat grass like oxen. You're not going to have that rich food that people tried to serve us when we first came here, that you are used to from that. You're literally going to eat grass from the field. And they shall wet you with the dew of heaven. That's the way you're not going to take baths or anything else. If you get wet, it's going to dew on the ground because you'll be laying on it when you're trying to sleep. And 7 times 7 shall pass over you. Till you shall know that the Most High rules in the kingdom of men and gives it to whomever he chooses. Until you learn who has the real power, Nebuchadnezzar. It is not you. The power you have was not something you earned, not something you gained, not something you would do. God gave it to you. Don't lose sight of that, Nebuchadnezzar. It is not you. The power is all in God. He chose you to allow you to have the power, and not because you're such a great person. Till you know that the Most High rules in the kingdom and gives it to whomever he chooses. And inasmuch as they gave the command to leave the stump and the roots of the tree, your kingdom shall be assured to you after you come to know that heaven rules. That means you're going to get it back. You're going to go through this period of time where you're going to end up like an animal, and you're going to eat the grass in the field, and you're not going to live in your castle and all that business. Not a castle, but the royal residence. You're going to do that until this time passes, until you really realize it's really God that's in power. You were only a steward of what he gave you. 27. Starting in that verse, Daniel chooses to give him some advice at this point. Whether God's interpreted it that way or Daniel in his wisdom is going to provide it, he does it anyway. Therefore, O king, let my advice, not the interpretation, my advice be acceptable to you. Break off your sins by being righteous. Right away. Stop what you've been doing. Accept humility. Be righteous with God from right now. And your iniquities by showing mercy to the poor. He was trying to just kind of lord it over everybody. He wasn't kind to anybody. Just wanted to exercise his strength all the time from that and take advantage of people. Perhaps, if you do that, perhaps, I can't promise, I'm not God, God didn't say this, but perhaps there may be a lengthening of your prosperity. If you were able to do that, you might get that. And all this came upon King Nebuchadnezzar. Remember, this is King Nebuchadnezzar that's telling us this. But what happens? He did it, came to pass that way, came like that. But at the end of the 12 months, after a year, he was walking about the royal palace of Babylon. There's his palace. He's in it. And the king spoke, famous last words, saying, "Is not this great Babylon that I, Nebuchadnezzar, have built for a royal dwelling by my, Nebuchadnezzar's, mighty power, for the honor of my, Nebuchadnezzar's, majesty." Who got the credit? Not God. Even though Daniel warned him, it took him only 12 months to fall back into the old ways and let his ego take over from him and say, this is what it is because of me. Verse 31, while the word was still in the king's mouth, a voice fell from heaven. King Nebuchadnezzar, to you it is spoken, the kingdom has departed from you. And they shall drive you from men, and your dwelling shall be with the beasts of the field. They shall make you eat grass like oxen, and 7 times shall pass over you until you know that the Most High rules in the kingdom of men and gives it to whomever he chooses. God speaks to him not in a dream this time. God speaks to him from heaven. Through an angel, for his own voice, don't know, but there's a voice from heaven this time. Telling him what Daniel told you, you have now caused to come into effect. And at that very hour, the word was fulfilled, what Daniel had said in the interpretation concerning Nebuchadnezzar. Right? He likes to talk about in the second period because he doesn't want to take it too personally now. Nebuchadnezzar, not me, but these are the words he's writing. He was driven from men and ate grass like oxen. His body was wet with the dew of heaven till his hair had grown like eagle's feathers and his nails like birds' claws. Not a pretty picture. Not somebody everybody went out and said, "Ooh, there, look, that's our king right over there. See him?" No, now it's not an animal. That's really our king over there. It looks like that. And at the end of the time, we think of seven times, basically is 7 years. At the end of that time, now he wants to say it's him, Nebuchadnezzar, lifted my eyes to heaven, and my understanding returned to me, and I blessed the Most High and praised and honored him who lives forever. I finally was humble enough to say, it's you. It's not me. It's you that's the most powerful God. And once I did that, lifted my idea, now guess what? I get my sanity back. I don't think I'm an animal to sit out there and eat the grass and live out there from that, just let my body go. But instead, I get my understanding back, and what do I do immediately with that? And I bless the Most High and praised and honored him who lives forever. For his dominion, not mine this time, is from an everlasting dominion. And his, God's, kingdom is from generation to generation. Different from what he said right before he had it, didn't it? Then it was my. Now it's his. He's come to that recognition from that. But he's put back into position of power again as that gold head to the whole image from that. So questions to ask ourselves. Who had the dream and vision? Again, it's Nebuchadnezzar that has it, another non-believer. The situation now is Nebuchadnezzar has become very full of himself, very egotistical, very much believing he makes things happen. He's the most powerful thing that there is everywhere, including in heaven. So the content of that dream was to give him, through the vision of his power of who he is today, kind of, start with that you are great. Yes, nobody can deny that. But you're great because God made you that way, into that tree, into all the fruit and everything else that you provide to the world, and that you can be seen from everywhere. Everybody knows who's the most powerful one. But just as that happens, now you've taken that too much to heart, too much to your own head, taking too much credit, and therefore, time to chop you down, strip everything off of you, and you go and live like a beast of the field from that. The purpose of that was to humiliate him, to bring him down, to humble him, but to be a message for everyone to say, don't get full of yourself at any point. What you have and what you accomplish is determined to some extent by God. God gave you stuff. That's what we talk about, being a steward. You're not giving your money. You're not giving your time. God gave you all those things. But just like King Nebuchadnezzar, who was arguably one of the greatest that lived, that's why he was that tree that everybody could see, you can be brought down because you didn't make that happen. God can make that happen to you. We've got to have humility. We've got to have appreciation for who really is in charge. How did it figure into God's general plan? Well, I don't know that it applied directly, but it certainly left a message about how our relationship is with God, that he is the power behind whatever we accomplish and whatever we do. That it's only under God's will to do those things and to give us those things. Other comments about Nebuchadnezzar's second dream?
It wasn't so much that he wanted to destroy Nebuchadnezzar, but he needed to recruit him to use him as his tool to punish not only chosen people by destroying Jerusalem, getting rid of the idol worship, but to destroy the nations around Jerusalem that were going to profit from their downfall. So God used Nebuchadnezzar as his tool, but the first thing he needed to do was to make sure that Nebuchadnezzar knew who was really in charge and make him humble enough to be a servant of his.
Which he didn't always do with everyone that he used that way, did he? You could take the Egyptians, for example, who he used to, kind of humble and control the Israelites, but he never really gave any insight into it to Pharaoh, and Pharaoh never saw himself as that instrument of God. Nebuchadnezzar, through these dreams and such, knew God was behind him and what he was able to accomplish from that. And God would turn around and treat Babylonia for all the things they had done to the Israelites, going the other direction from that. Even though they'd done kind of what he directed, they had done evil to his people, and therefore they were treated that way. But it's interesting that Nebuchadnezzar he treated differently, and he did use it as part of using him from that. Other people he used without letting them even have any insight to his presence in that whole event. Good points. All right, let's move to the New Testament, finally, to a dream in the New Testament. Probably from somebody we're familiar with by the name of Joseph. So Matthew 1, starting in verse 18. Now the birth of Jesus Christ was as follows. After his mother Mary was betrothed to Joseph, before they came together, that is, in a physical relationship kind of thing, she was found with child of the Holy Spirit. That's part of the prophecies of the virgin birth from that. So now she's with child. Joseph has not had any kind of relationship with her. So we go in verse 19. Then Joseph, her husband, being a just man, because that's what he was going to be, her husband, she's betrothed to him, not her husband necessarily at this point, and not wanting to make her a public example, was minded to put her away secretly. So if they were married, we know that he could put her away because of what was established with Moses. When people wanted to have divorces, there was a certificate of divorce. And you could present that, and you could put the wife away for things that you found in violation. Obviously, this being the main way, a reason that you would do that, at least anything God would accept, is if you found out she'd had relationships with somebody else. In this case, that's not the full picture, but that was certainly what Joseph would have thought. Who would think that God had impregnated Mary, short of Mary knowing that from that? But that's the state. He's about to put her away. He's being very nice about it. He's not going to make a public example of her. He's not going to have her stoned. for having been with somebody else. He doesn't have any idea who that would have been or how that would have been probably, but he's going to put her away secretly. And that's his plan now as we start this story. And while he thought about these things, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to him. But he appeared to him in a dream, saying, Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take to you Mary, your wife, for that which is conceived in her is of the Holy Spirit. And she will bring forth a son, and you shall call his name Jesus, for he will save his people from their sins. Now, it's interesting. How did Mary find out about it? We don't find out about that in Matthew. We don't find about that until John, I think. Luke or John, I can't remember offhand. Luke. How did she find out? Did she have a dream? Did she have a vision? An angel appeared to her. We don't know. Neither case is alluded to in that case. It doesn't say it was a vision. It doesn't say it's a dream. We see an angel appear to her, Gabriel. But with Joseph, it's a dream. Why, I don't know. But it's interesting. Both people that are involved in it see it different ways. Maybe because she was more a part and party to the whole thing, God felt it more important to make it very clear and not just think that's a dream, that's not the truth, or whatever. He decided to do it in life. Don't know. So why did this dream happen to Joseph to do it and how he was to handle things? So all this was done that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken by the Lord through the prophet, saying, Behold, the virgin shall be with child and bear a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel, which is translated God with us. So it was brought about, as we all know, and we are thankful for, because God prophesied it a long time before, that Jesus, our Savior, would come via a virgin birth, and that he would get a name about God coming down to be with us, to be human at the same time being God from that. And this is now being shared with Joseph, the man who is going to be the stepfather, if you will, of Jesus while he's growing up. We go on in the next verses. Then Joseph, being aroused from sleep, did as the angel of the Lord commanded him, and took to him his wife, and did not know her. He did not have any kind of relation with her, physical relation with her, till she had brought forth her firstborn son, and he called his name Jesus. The father was responsible for the name. If you remember what happens with Zacharias and John, the mother says, because Zacharias has been made mute in preparation for John the Baptist's arrival, she says his name to be John. It's not a part of the lineage from that. Who do they ultimately go to find out what the name's going to be? The father. So Joseph's got to be on board with the name as well. So that's why it's got to include, not only has she got my child and not somebody else's child, this is God's doing from that, but I also want a particular name for this child. And so Joseph's brought into that. And so Joseph gets a direct dream from God. Again, one in which we have no images. It's nothing like what Nebuchadnezzar's two dreams were like, where vivid images happen, but mainly just some words being shared, and only in one direction this time. We don't have a discussion going back and forth like Abimelech. We have God just giving directions and explanation of the situation to Joseph so that he can understand and operate appropriately for that. Comments on Joseph's dream? All right. We'll actually talk about what we're looking ahead to. I never make it this far in the slides, but I did this time because I didn't put any as much. So our tentative schedule has us looking at the last two dreams for the most part, I think the last two. Next week that are in the New Testament, we'll finish off dreams with the wise men having a dream and Pilate's wife having a dream. Then we will talk about Abraham's vision, so we'll turn to vision, so we'll go back to the Old Testament, see Abraham's vision, and then we'll talk about Samuel's vision, which we kind of touched on a little bit in here because it kind of related to some things that we were seeing with Nebuchadnezzar, but we'll talk about those. So that's kind of what you can plan for the next 3 weeks, assuming I make it through those. If we slow down, then they just push up that way. We'll see how far we make it with visions. Any other comments? All right. Appreciate your input. We'll see you all next week. Have a good one.